Welcome to The Leaders Speak, a podcast of Smith, Gambrell, and Russell. And today we are joined by one of our partners, Collins Brown, who is in our private client group practice of Smith, Gambrell, and Russell. Collins works primarily with business owners, executives, and families to help them accomplish their goals and objectives with respect to their most important assets. His experience includes the design and implementation of sophisticated wealth transfer, tax and estate plans, as well as drafting complex wills, trust agreements, buy-sell agreements, and operating agreements. Collins, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So we know that we are in the middle or possibly at the end of a pandemic. And I've read, I actually meant to pull up some statistics, but I've read that there has been an increase in people seeking out estate planning and having more questions about wills and things like that. What would you, have you seen that happening?
Yeah, we have seen some of that. We've seen some new clients wanting to get some documents in place. We've seen some old clients revisit their estate plans. I think for a lot of people, just the slowdown in their day-to-day life has caused them to think about things like that. And
right.
Maybe not dissimilar from the way people are working on projects around the house. You know, it's estate planning is something that's easy to put off, but it's really important to do. And so I think with more time on their hands, people have been starting to think about getting that done.
Yeah. Actually, I did want to, before we dive more into that, I wanted to back up a little bit and just talk a little bit more about your background, though. How long have you been, first of all, practicing law? And have you always worked in estate planning and trust and estate?
I have. I've been practicing for 8 years, and tax planning and estate planning has always been a really large part of my practice. Mm-hmm. Most of my clients, or a good chunk at least, are business owners, and so I have some good experience doing M&A work, mergers and acquisitions, general corporate work, just because of the demands of my clients, and so I think that's it's a little bit of a unique take on estate planning with a more of a business mindset.
And what, you've always known that this is the type of law that you wanted to practice?
Yeah, I think, for my first tax class in law school, I really enjoyed it. It's such a great blend of being able to be creative and problem solve, but usually in a really friendly setting. And I really enjoy getting to know the clients that I work with, and I like the personal aspect of that.
Good, great. So now, when I hear the term estate planning, sometimes I think people feel that estate planning is just for affluent individuals or high net worth individuals or families. Is that true? Do you have to have a certain amount for it to be considered estate planning?
Definitely not. I mean, I think everybody, every adult needs a will. Every adult needs a financial power of attorney and a healthcare directive. The wills are important because if you die without one, the state of Georgia has created a will for you. We have what's called the laws of intestacy, and so your assets will pass in accordance with those laws. It may be that works out okay, and it may be that's not what somebody wants. It also can be very complicated when we get into the probate process. Probate is dealing with a decedent's assets after they've died. Probate process can be really difficult if someone's died without a will, and it can be a lot more onerous on your family. And so, getting a will is an important thing. I think just as important are the other two documents I mentioned, which is a power of attorney and a healthcare directive. Those generally are going to apply when a client is disabled or incapacitated, is the better word, and not when they've died. When they've died, their will is going to kick in. But incapacity is, it's a real issue, and so planning for that, I think, is really important, and that's not something that people always think about when they think about estate planning. But those are kind of the foundational documents that we would give anybody who comes in to see us: a will, a power of attorney, and a healthcare directive. And then as you get into more affluent clients, we would bolt on other things, but just about anybody who comes to see us, we'd include those documents.
Okay. Are there other foundational estate planning documentations or documents that you think it's important for individuals to know about up front?
Those are the main documents, but the other things that we think about that I think sometimes people are not as focused on are beneficiary designations. So that's for life insurance and for retirement accounts, your IRA or 401k. And probably beyond the scope of this podcast, but especially on retirement accounts, you want to think long and hard about your beneficiary designations there that can have some pretty significant income tax consequences for your family members. And same on life insurance. Life insurance a lot of times is the biggest asset that someone is passing down to their family. And, a lot of times there hasn't been a lot of thought put into how that asset, those dollars, actually pass to the family members. And so taking some time to think through who is named as the beneficiary on those assets is really important.
Okay. So how often should someone update their estate planning, their will? Is it kind of I did it, I'm done, or should they revisit it every year, every few years?
Yeah, we get asked that question a lot. And what I tell people to think about, is when we're drafting the documents, let's make sure that we're thinking about how we would want things to work if you were to pass away today. Mm-hmm. And so that might mean that things change maybe a little bit sooner than you'd want. But I think it's really important to capture, as we're sitting here today, how do we want things to work? The big items that are going to affect your documents are, I think two things, maybe three. The first is, who have you named in the document? If you have minor kids and you've named your next door neighbor as the guardian and you move across the country, that probably doesn't work anymore.
Right.
A lot of times people lose touch with somebody that they've named as executor or trustee or guardian. And so that's just a practical reason to update the documents. Another reason would be a change in the laws. Over the last few years, the estate tax exemption, the amount that you can pass to your heirs without paying any estate tax, has increased dramatically. It's $11.58 million. As we sit here today in 2020, that's per person. So almost $23 million for a couple, which is a lot. That's slated to go back down. It'll get cut in half at the end of 2025. So starting in 2026, unless Congress acts. But it's not all that long ago that that number was $3 million. And so changes in law like that can make a big impact on the way the documents work. Lastly, maybe a change in financial circumstances. That's what people think about the most. If I have a big windfall, am I going to need to update these documents? And a lot of times the answer is no, unless it's a really, really big windfall. I think just as a family's wealth ticks up, I think for the most part, the documents should be pretty good. So that's a lot of times that's the not as big a concern as who are we naming in the documents, how do things work, and then changes in law.
Okay, great. So with COVID-19 and with social distancing, are you, I know you've mentioned that there has been an uptick, there have been more questions and calls from our clients. So you're still able to help clients despite the social distancing?
We are. It's hopefully we're getting closer to a point where we can finalize a lot of these documents. What we're doing right now, unless there's something urgent, I think we're either encouraging clients to get their documents signed on their own and sending them good instructions. We really prefer not to do that, but I think we've done that in some cases. I know I've done it in one case where it's not our favorite thing to do. We much prefer to do it in person because of the formalities required, particularly with the will and some of the law around that. We really like to do it in person. And so for most clients, I think we're just encouraging them to sit tight, and we'll get documents signed here pretty soon, hopefully. But that doesn't mean we can't be ready to go as soon as things open back up. And so we've been doing a lot of that kind of stuff, getting documents ready, drafting documents, thinking about a good plan. For a lot of people, there's existing stuff that we're working on too that may not require new documents. It's a great time to be giving assets away because we've got depressed values. Stock market's down, even though it's come back up some. Business valuations are down. So if you're thinking about doing estate tax planning, it's a great time. Interest rates are low. And so some of our strategies that work off of interest rates it's as good an environment as we've had in a really long time to be doing that kind of planning.
Great. So if nothing else, this is a great time for people to call and just consider a tax planning strategy and because this is a good time to just review that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you for this time. Just wanted to have a brief conversation and learn more about you and also about what's happening around estate planning and tax planning. This has been very informative and helpful. So how can a listener reach you if they have more questions?
Yeah, the best way is probably by email. And my email address is cbrown@sgrlaw.com. And we're here, we're working away, and would love to help anybody that needs it.
All right. Thank you so much. And again, if you have any questions about what Collins has shared today, also feel free to visit our website, sgrlaw.com, and you can find his bio there, as well as our description of our practice. We will leave this in the notes below. Thank you for joining, and you all have a great day.